Welcome back, everyone, to NFL Nexus. Let's just dive right into today's explainer because we are breaking down the massive, and I mean massive, ripple effects of the 2026 NFL Draft on the Houston Texans roster. Plus, as a little bonus later on, we're taking a wide lens look at the rest of the league to figure out when we can actually expect these top rookie quarterbacks to take the field. Look, we are looking at a truly pivotal, game-changing moment for Houston today. This franchise is officially transitioning right before our eyes from a young, fun, upstart team into a bona fide heavyweight Super Bowl contender. And because of that, the stakes for this specific draft were astronomically high, and the ripple effects on the veteran depth chart are absolutely going to define their season. Now, before we really get into the deep weeds of this incredible draft fallout, make sure to subscribe to the channel, like this explainer, and comment down below with what you thought of your own team's draft class. Also, you can help support the channel by purchasing our brand new coloring books. Seriously, they are absolutely perfect for children, for grandchildren, and honestly adults as well. It's a great way to unwind. You can access them through the link in the description below, or simply by scanning the QR code you see right on the screen. Okay, so here's our roadmap for today's explainer. First, Houston's 2026 draft fallout. Second, the biggest Texans winners. Third, the biggest Texans losers. Fourth, a potential Jadeveon Clowney reunion. And finally, number 5, 2026 rookie QB timelines.
Section 1. Houston's 2026 Draft Fallout, focusing on the roster ripple effect.
You know, a draft fundamentally alters the landscape for the veterans who are already sitting in the building. Every single pick is a loud, undeniable message from the front office directly to the current roster. The Texans didn't just tweak around the margins here, guys. They brought in heavy, direct competition. They utilized pick 42, pick 59, and an early third-round selection to send a very distinct message about their physical identity going forward. When a team spends that kind of premium draft capital, especially back-to-back in the top 60, I promise you, they aren't drafting these guys to just hold clipboards and learn quietly on the practice squad. No way. They're drafting them to play immediately. Houston made 8 total selections across the 3 days in Pittsburgh, and they focused intensely on the trenches and the defense. This massive influx of young, hungry, and most importantly, inexpensive talent immediately changes the calculus for the veterans. Drafting heavily in the trenches sets a serious tone. It literally says the front office wants a more physical, imposing point of attack. And what that means in practical terms is that some guys just had their jobs virtually guaranteed for the season, while others are now staring down the barrel of a brutal, high-stakes training camp battle just to stay on the team.
Section 2. The biggest Texans winners, looking at whose stock is trending straight up.
3 clear, undeniable winners emerged from draft weekend without a single scratch on their depth chart status. We're talking about running back David Montgomery, the entire run defense unit, and wide receiver Jaden Higgins.
Let's really get into the minutia of why this is such a massive win for these 3, starting with David Montgomery. By adding offensive line maulers like Kalen Rutledge and completely ignoring the running back position over all 8 of their picks, the Texans front office effectively handed David Montgomery the keys to the backfield. Think about this from Montgomery's perspective. The Texans actually traded up into the first round to grab Kalen Rutledge. If you look at Rutledge's collegiate blocking grades, the guy posted a 91.4 run blocking grade on inside zone concepts last year. He is a pure, devastating mauler in the trenches. Now, just imagine pairing him with left guard Wyatt Teller, who routinely posts PFF run blocking scores in the mid-80s, and Ed Ingram on the other side. That offensive interior is a literal snowplow now. Montgomery averaged an impressive 3.1 yards after contact last season, but mostly because he had to break tackles behind the line of scrimmage. With this newly constructed interior, Montgomery is the undisputed focal point of a rushing attack that is built from the ground up to crush defensive fronts. That's a huge win. Then you look at the run defense. Houston was already an elite unit against the run in 2025, but they weren't satisfied. They went out and got Caden McDonald as an absolute day 2 steal. McDonald's gap-stuffing abilities are legendary from his college tape. He consistently commanded double teams at the collegiate level, which frees up linebackers to just shoot the A and B gaps cleanly. They added incredibly physical, aggressive players down the board to solidify what was already a massive strength. And finally, we have to talk about Jaden Higgins. With rumors swirling for months about Houston taking a first-round receiver, they actually waited all the way until round 6 to draft Lewis Bond. This tells us everything we need to know. The Texans are fully 100% confident in Higgins stepping up as the clear number 2 target in this offense. He is primed for a massive statistical jump this year, with absolutely zero threat to his target share behind Nico Collins.
Section 3. The biggest Texans losers. The roster battles ahead.
So, the NFL is a vicious, unforgiving, zero-sum game. As we just saw, drafting complementary pieces creates job security, right? But drafting direct competition puts veterans squarely on the roster bubble. When the team invests draft picks directly into your position group, the harsh financial realities of the league immediately kick in. A rookie selected in the middle rounds is locked into a highly controlled, incredibly cheap 4-year contract. Suddenly, your veteran contract becomes a massive, glaring target for front office salary cap savings. Think about the math. If a rookie can give the team 80% of your production for 15% of your salary, front offices won't even hesitate to make the cut. That's just the business of football. You either elevate your game immediately in camp to justify your cap hit, or you find yourself turning in your playbook and looking for a new city.
And that brings us directly to the guys feeling the heat. Look at 2025 starter Jake Andrews. He suddenly has a steep, almost vertical mountain to climb just to make the 53-man roster. Andrews started last year, sure, but Houston doubled down hard on the interior line. He is now clawing for reps against a first-round pick in Keelan Rutledge, plus Fabici and Wawu and Evan Brown. The interior line room is incredibly crowded now, and Andrews simply does not have the draft capital protection that Rutledge has. Rutledge is making the team, period. Andrews has to fight for his life. Then you have tight end Cade Stover. Stover dealt with a lingering high ankle sprain for the back half of 2025, culminating in a pretty rough postseason where he really struggled to create any separation. Going into 2026, he desperately needed a clear path to a bigger role to prove himself. Instead, what happens? The Texans draft Marlon Klein in the second round, which is a huge investment, and then they sign veteran Foster Moreau in free agency. And here's the kicker with Moreau. His contract includes significant veteran guarantees that practically lock him into the roster. With Dalton Schultz still leading the room as the main guy, Stover is suddenly fighting for a TE3 or TE4 spot with absolutely no financial leverage whatsoever. And finally, look at safety Jalen Reed. He flashed at times as a fill-in starter, but his coverage grades in man-to-man situations dipped well below average down the stretch last year. The Texans responded to that by drafting Kamari Ramsey in the 5th round. Ramsey is coming off a collegiate season where he posted elite ball hawk stats, including 4 interceptions and 8 pass breakups. Reed now has to compete with Ramsey's clearly superior ball skills, plus Reed Blankenship and a healthy MJ Stewart. His spot on the 53-man roster is legitimately in jeopardy today because Ramsey offers cheaper and potentially much higher upside production.
Section 4. A Jadeveon Clowney reunion, filling the edge rusher void.
So, while the interior of the defensive line is totally locked down with the addition of Caden McDonald, Houston desperately needs a third edge rusher to rotate in and keep Will Anderson and Daniel Hunter fresh. Look, Anderson and Hunter are an absolute two-headed monster, there's no denying that. But playing defensive end in the modern NFL is exhausting. Last season, Anderson and Hunter both hovered around an 82% snap share. The optimal NFL defensive end snap count to actually maintain explosiveness deep into the fourth quarter is usually around 65 to 70%. When your premier edge rushers are forced to play over 80% of the snaps, their pass rush win rate inevitably drops in the final minutes of close games because they are just gassed. You need a reliable third guy to rotate in, create pressure, and let your superstars catch their breath on the sideline. The Texans entirely bypass this glaring need in the draft, meaning they must turn to the open market right now.
That number right there on your screen, 8.5, represents the exact elite production the Texans desperately need right now, and it points directly to their former 2014 #1 overall pick, Jadeveon Clowney.
Clowney's current value in the NFL is found in his remarkable efficiency. He doesn't need to be an every-down player to completely wreck an opposing offensive game plan. By keeping him on a strict pitch count, you ensure that an aging pass rusher's body stays healthy, fresh, and highly dangerous for a deep playoff run in January. It's all about maximizing his impact per snap.
Let's dive incredibly deep into these metrics from last year, because frankly, they are staggering. At 33 years old, acting purely as a rotational pass rusher for Dallas last year, Clowney still racked up 12 tackles for loss and 8.5 sacks. Think about that context. He only played about 30% of the defensive snaps for the Cowboys. Just 30%, but in that highly specialized, limited role, his pass rush win rate was in the top 15% of the entire league among situational rushers. Alongside those 8.5 sacks, he generated over 40 total pressures. When you compare his efficiency to other pure rotational rushers in the league right now, Clowney is practically in a class of his own. Most rotational guys, they might grab 3 or 4 sacks if they get lucky with cleanup duty or an unblocked scheme, but Clowney was physically beating premier left tackles on obvious passing downs. Just imagine injecting that level of targeted, high-octane production into the Texans' defensive line as your third option. Opposing offenses are already forced to double-team Anderson and Hunter all game. If you bring in Clowney on third down, he would routinely face single-team blocks against exhausted backup tackles or tight ends, and he would absolutely feast on those matchups.
Bringing Clowney back to H-Town isn't just a fun nostalgia trip. It is a strategic, teen-friendly maneuver to finalize one of the most terrifying defensive lines in football. General Manager Nick Caserio has a very well-documented history of targeting veterans on short-term, prove-it contracts. A hypothetical contract for Clowney right now would likely feature an incredibly low base salary to protect the team's salary cap, but it would be heavily padded with performance-based incentives tied directly to his sack totals and how far the team advances in the playoffs. Because Houston just drafted Caden McDonald to swallow up the run game on the interior, they don't need Clowney to be a 60-minute run-stopping anchor anymore. They just need him to pin his ears back and get after the quarterback on 3rd and long. It perfectly minimizes the team's financial risk while absolutely maximizing their defensive ceiling.
Section 5. 2026 Rookie QB Timelines. When will they actually start?
So while Houston currently has the luxury of fine-tuning a Super Bowl-ready roster around an established elite young star like C.J. Stroud, the rest of the league is dealing with the most critical, franchise-altering question in football: exactly when to play the rookie quarterback. We are seeing a massive, sweeping shift in league philosophy right now. Over the last 5 years, the failure rates of highly drafted quarterbacks being immediately thrown into the fire behind terrible rebuilding offensive lines have been staggering. Organizations are finally waking up and realizing that baptism by fire often just ruins the prospect entirely. The organizations drafting these young signal callers have specifically structured their salary caps and veteran depth charts so they don't have to rush their prize rookies onto the field.
We have 5 distinctly different, utterly fascinating timelines to break down here, and honestly, the microscopic details of each situation really tell the story of the upcoming 2026 NFL season. Let's really dig into this, starting with the Cardinals and Carson Beck. Look, Arizona currently has the longest odds to win the Super Bowl. Jacoby Brissett is the expected starter, but there is a massive underlying issue brewing there. Brissett is currently locked in a bitter contract dispute regarding his guaranteed money for the season. If Brissett decides to hold out, or if the team moves him, Gardner Minshew steps right in. First-year head coach Mike LaFleur is bringing a very complex scheme, and he will likely let the veterans take the physical beating behind what is still a porous offensive line early on. But right around Week 7, when a playoff run is realistically mathematically out of reach and the offensive line has hopefully had some time to gel, they'll officially hand the keys to Beck. Then we have Fernando Mendoza with the Raiders. Historically, about 2/3 of quarterbacks drafted number 1 overall start in Week 1. Mendoza is going to sit, completely breaking that trend. And the reason lies entirely in the offensive scheme. The Raiders brought in Kirk Cousins specifically to run Clint Kubiak's highly specific system. Kubiak's offense relies heavily on complex zone-run schemes paired with under-center, play-action passing. This is a notoriously difficult system for a rookie coming from a pure shotgun spread offense in college to master right away. Cousins, however, knows this system flawlessly from their time together back in 2021. The Raiders are going to let Cousins run the show until at least Week 11, giving Mendoza the vital, pressure-free reps he needs in practice to learn the footwork of an under-center offense without the pressure of live bullets flying at him on Sundays. For the Jets, Cade Klubnik will sit behind Geno Smith. The exact salary cap situation here dictates absolutely everything. Geno Smith gives second-year coach Aaron Glenn the absolute best slim chance to win right now and save his job after going 3-14 last year. The Jets restructured Geno's deal recently to make him incredibly difficult to cut this year without incurring massive dead money against the cap. Because of that unavoidable financial reality, Geno is the guy. Once the season is mathematically lost, likely around Week 14, Klubnik finally gets a late-season showcase to see what he has. Looking much further ahead to 2027, the Steelers drafted Drew Aller, but they currently have Aaron Rodgers reunited with Mike McCarthy. The Steelers' offensive line woes from last year are still largely unaddressed, guys. They allowed the 3rd most pressures in the entire league. You simply do not put a raw prospect like Aller behind that kind of line. You let Aaron Rodgers, who still possesses the quickest release in football, navigate that collapsing pocket. Until Rodgers retires, Aller is going to sit and learn how to read complex NFL blitz packages from the absolute safety of the sideline. And finally, Ty Simpson with the Rams. The Rams are using the exact meticulous blueprint the Packers used with Jordan Love. If you compare Ty Simpson's college tape directly to Jordan Love's college tape, the similarities are honestly terrifying. Both have elite, off-platform arm talent, but both suffered from reckless decision-making and very poor lower body mechanics under pressure. The Packers fixed Love by hiding him from the world for years. The Rams plan to stash Simpson on the bench all the way until 2028. They have an MVP-level master in Matthew Stafford currently running Sean McVay's offense. Simpson is going to completely rebuild his footwork in the shadows for 2 full seasons before ever taking a meaningful snap in Los Angeles.
Whether it's a rebuilding franchise waiting patiently on a rookie quarterback to develop, or the Houston Texans looking for that final, lethal veteran piece in Jadeveon Clowney, the NFL is entirely about timing. The Texans have expertly shored up their interior line, they've insulated their offensive weapons, and they've sent a clear, ruthless message to their veterans about competing for their jobs every single day. Adding a highly efficient rotational piece like Clowney to an already terrifying defense might just be the exact maneuver that secures a championship for Houston. Thank you all so much for diving into this with me. Again, remember to subscribe to NFL Nexus, leave a comment with your thoughts on these draft ripples, and let me know if you think Clowney is the missing piece.
And please don't forget to grab your coloring books via the link below or by scanning the QR code right there on your screen. They really are great for the kids, grandkids, and yourself. Until next time, keep analyzing, and I'll see you in the next explainer.